James Garner finally tells the truth about Randolph Scott. James Garner was born James Scott Bumgarner on April 7, 1928 in Norman, Oklahoma. He grew up in a small town during the Great Depression, a time that helped shape his strong work habits and his simple, down-to-earth personality. Garner's early years were tough. His mother died when he was just 5 years old, and his father, Weldon Bumgarner, had a hard time keeping things stable. Most of James' younger days were spent moving between relatives and doing small jobs to help support himself. These early tough times taught him to be quietly strong and to care deeply about others, which would later become key parts of how he appeared on screen. Before he ever thought about acting, Garner served his country with honor. At the age of 16, he left school and joined the Merchant Marine, then later served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, where he earned 2 Purple Hearts for his bravery in battle. The discipline and courage he showed as a soldier came naturally into his later career, where he often played men with principles who stood up for what was right. Even when facing hard times, his experiences in the war left him with long-lasting scars, both on his body and in his mind. But they also gave him a deep sense of being humble and a refusal to make heroism look glamorous, something that made him different among Hollywood's leading men. Garner's start in acting was almost by accident. After coming back from theater, he moved to Los Angeles and began doing various jobs, including modeling for print ads. One day while helping a friend with a role, he was noticed by a talent agent who saw his striking good looks, calm way of acting, and natural charm. He began taking small roles in television and film, learning the job through experience rather than formal classes. His big break came in 1957 when he was cast as Brett Maverick in hit TV series Maverick. The show, with its clever mix of humor, adventure, and Western charm, turned Garner into an overnight star. Unlike traditional Western heroes, his Maverick was witty, didn't want to fight unless necessary, and always ready with a sharp comeback. A reflection of Garner's real-life personality. Following the success of Maverick, James Garner became one of the most popular stars of the 1960s. He easily moved to film, starring in a wide variety of types of movies, from romantic comedies like The Thrill of It All 1963, and Move Over Darling 1963, with Doris Day, to war epics like The Great Escape 1963, where he held his own alongside Steve McQueen. Garner's easygoing charm made him easy to relate to for audiences, while his subtle emotional depth earned him praise from critics. Unlike many of his fellow actors, he avoided the traps of Hollywood ego, choosing a more down-to-earth and honest approach to fame. Co-workers often described him as a true gentleman, professional, kind, and surprisingly humble. In the 1970s, Garner once again captured the public's imagination with Eric Ford Files, one of television's most famous detective shows. As Jim Rockford, a funny private investigator who preferred talking his way out of trouble rather than using violence, Garner reinvented the TV hero style. The show's blend of humor, intelligence, and realism earned him an Emmy Award in 1977, as well as lasting love from fans. The role was physically demanding, and Garner performed many of his own stunts, often suffering injuries that would later affect his health. Yet, his dedication never stopped. He was known for his professionalism, rarely missing a day of work despite constant back pain and tiredness. Garner's later career was marked by variety and grace. He appeared in highly praised films such as Murphy's Romance 1985, which earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, and The Notebook 2004, where his tender performance of an aging husband, caring for his sick wife, moved audiences worldwide. He also returned to television for several successful projects, including Maverick and Rockford Files reunion movies, proving that his charm and appeal were timeless. Garner was also a respected fighter for actors' rights, often speaking out against unfair studio practices and fighting for creative freedom in Hollywood. James Garner's personal life was marked by a lasting love story that reflected the same warmth, steadiness, and quiet strength that audiences so admired in his screen personality. He was married only once to Lois Josephine Fleischman Clark, a lively and charming woman who would remain his partner for nearly 6 decades. Their meeting was the stuff of Hollywood luck. Garner met Lois at a party in 1956, and from that very first evening something clicked. He later remembered that he was completely attracted to her energy and spirit, saying, "We went to dinner every night for 14 nights. I was just absolutely crazy about her." The intensity of their romance was matched only by how quick it was. After just 16 days, on August 17, 1956, they were married. In a time when quick romances were often viewed with doubt, their marriage proved to be surprisingly long-lasting. Garner often joked that he had spent $77 on their honeymoon, adding with his typical humor, "And it almost broke me." That funny self-putting-down comment was typical of the actor who, despite fame and fortune, never lost his sense of being modest or down-to-earth charm. Garner often described marriage with humor and honesty, comparing it to military service. "Marriage is like the army. A very own emplance, but you'd be surprised at the large number of people who sign up again," he once joked. The comparison showed not negativity, but a deep understanding of commitment and keeping at it, qualities that both he and Lois shared. The relationship, like any long marriage, had its challenges, but it was built in loyalty and real affection. Lois, who practiced Judaism, brought a different cultural and spiritual viewpoint to their home life, but the couple's mutual respect went beyond those differences. Garner, who was never known to be strict about religion, welcomed her beliefs with an open heart and found comfort in the peace and balance she brought to his soft and busy life as an actor. When they married, Lois was already a mother to a young daughter from a previous marriage. Her daughter Kim was 9 years old and at the time recovering from the effects of polio, a disease that had left lasting challenges for many children of that time. Garner stepped into the role of stepmother with care and patience, providing stability and kindness to both Lois and her child. It was one of the many aspects of his character that looked like the quiet goodness of his on-screen roles. He never looked for attention for his good deeds, but those close to him often talked about his generosity and sense of duty. In 1958, Garner and Lois welcomed their own child, a daughter named Greta Shea Garner, born on January 4, 1958. She would grow up to become an accomplished person in her own right, later working as a producer and philanthropist. Garner's deep love for his family was clear throughout his life, and he frequently spoke of his daughters with pride and tenderness. The Garner's marriage lasted for nearly 58 years, a rare achievement in Hollywood, where relationships often fall apart under the pressures of fame, long separations, and public attention. However, their life together was not without rough times. The couple went through 2 periods of separation, the first lasting 3 months in 1970 and a longer one in 1979. During those times apart, Garner admitted that both he and Lois needed space to grow on their own, but there was never a sense that their bond had truly been broken. "We just needed a little distance," he once said, "but we always found our way back." True to his word, the couple got back together in September 1981, reaffirming their commitment to one another. Throughout his long and storied Hollywood career, James Garner rarely spoke badly of anyone. Known for his easygoing charm and gentlemanly personality, he preferred to stay out of drama that often swirled around the theme of business. However, when the subject of Randolph Scott came up in later interviews, Garner surprised many with his honest remarks. Randolph Scott, Garner once said, was one of the most private and misunderstood men in Hollywood. People thought they knew him because of his screen image, but the real man was something else entirely. With this statement, Garner opened a window into a side of Scott that few ever saw, one shaped by discipline, quiet strength, and a code of behavior that seemed to come from another time. Garner, who became famous decades after Scott had already built his reputation as one of Hollywood's great Western stars, admired him both as a performer and as a man. "When I was a young actor just starting out," Garner remembered, "Scott was already a legend. He carried himself with dignity like Simeon, who knew exactly who he was. There was no pretending, no showing off, just a real sense of presence." Garner noted that Scott didn't need to raise his voice or make big gestures to get respect. His calm confidence and quiet power were enough to control any scene. To Garner, Scott represented an ideal of manliness that was fading from Hollywood. A man of few words but great integrity, whose actions spoke far louder than his fame ever could. But Garner didn't shy away from pointing out that Scott was also a man wrapped in mystery. He kept his private life locked away. He said, "Nobody really knew what went on behind that calm exterior. You could work with him for months and still not feel like you truly knew him." Garner believed that this intense privacy sometimes led to misunderstandings. Rumors often followed Scott about his personal life, his relationships, and his supposed unfriendliness. But Garner dismissed much of the gossip. People made up stories because he didn't give them anything real to talk about, Garner explained. He didn't play the Hollywood game, didn't chase publicity or fame. He was content to let his work do the talking. Garner also admired Scott's professionalism on set. He showed up on time, knew his lines, and treated everyone from the director to the crew with respect. Garner said, "That may sound simple, but in Hollywood, that kind of consistency is rare." Scott believed in doing the job right every single time. Garner saw this as a reflection of Scott's upbringing in the South, where manners and discipline were deeply built in values. He brought that Southern sense of honor with him everywhere. Garner noted, even when he disagreed with someone, he handled it quietly with class. When asked about Scott's legacy, Garner was thoughtful. Randolph Scott wasn't the loudest or the flashiest actor, but he left an impression that never faded. He said he didn't need gimmicks. He just stood there tall and steady, and you believed every word he said. That's real acting. Garner also revealed that Scott's influence reached beyond the Western type of movie. He defined what it meant to be a leading man. Garner said strong, dependable, a man of principle. Those were traits audiences respected. And I think a lot of us, on purpose or not, tried to live up to that. However, Garner also admitted that Scott's distance sometimes created an emotional wall between him and others. He wasn't the kind of man you'd sit down and have heart-to-heart talks with, Garner remembered. He didn't wear his feelings on his sleeve. Maybe that's why his characters always seemed so serious. That was him. Yet, Garner didn't see this as a flaw. Instead, he saw it as part of Scott's realness. He didn't pretend to be open or emotional just to please people. Garner said he was who he was. And that's something I respected deeply. In the end, Garner's comments about Randolph Scott were not only a tribute, but also a quiet revelation. If there was one word to describe him, it would be steadfast, Garner concluded. He didn't change with the trends, didn't bend under pressure. He lived by his own code and never wavered from it. Coming from a man like James Garner, who himself was known for integrity and humility, those words carried great weight. Through Garner's rare glimpse into Scott's character, audiences were reminded that behind the serious cowboy off silver screen stood a man of remarkable discipline, dignity, and depth. A true Hollywood original whose sequel strength inspired generations that followed. James Garner's passing in 2014 marked the end of one of Hollywood's most lasting love stories, coming heartbreakingly close to what would have been his and Lois Clark's 58th wedding anniversary. The timing of his death added a sad layer of sadness as each wed the depth of their nearly 6 decades together, a rare feat in an industry often defined by short relationships and broken marriages. Garner and Lois had shared a bond that stood strong against the turbulent nature of fame, the pressures of constant public attention, and the passage of time. Married in 1956 after only 2 weeks off dating, their relationship became a testament to love's staying power and the simple truth that sometimes when two people meet, they just know. In interviews, Garner often spoke fondly of Lois, calling her the love of his life, and those who knew the couple remarked that despite his tough, easygoing screen image, he was completely devoted to her behind closed doors. Even as Garner's health began to decline in his latter years, Lois remained his anchor, caring for him quietly and lovingly at their Brentwood home, protecting his privacy from the outside world. When James Garner died on July 19, 2014 at the age of 86, it left a void that Lois would carry for the rest of her life. Though she lived another 7 years, those who were close to her said that she never truly got over losing him. For Lois, the man who had been her partner, trusted friend, and companion through the highs and lows of life, was gone, and the silence he left behind spoke volumes. Her days reportedly became quieter, filled with caressed memories of their shared adventures, from his early television success in Maverick and the Rockford Files to his later triumphs in film. She had always been content to stand slightly in the background, allowing her husband to shine. But those who knew them said she was his greatest source of stability. Garner himself had once admitted that Lois's steady nature balanced his sometimes fiery personality, and that her groundedness was a big part of why their marriage worked so well.